Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to 15th century Japan, to a quiet little coastal village where the breeze smells like seaweed, the sky turns purple just before dusk, and the loudest sound most nights is someone snoring through thin walls. But don't get too cozy, because under that peaceful surface something is rumbling, something deep and ancient. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere cozy tonight, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a fishing village, somewhere along the southeastern coast of Japan. You don't know it by that name, your world isn't carved neatly into nations and prefectures like today. But this is what we'd now call the Key Peninsula, dotted with villages too small to appear on most maps. You don't need a map anyway, you've never travelled farther than half a day's walk inland. The village smells like wood smoke, salt and drying kelp. Chickens peck at the dust beside your neighbour's sandals. The ocean, visible just down the hill, sparkles like hammered metal under a soft spring sun. You grew up to this rhythm, the lazy knock of bamboo wind chimes, the splash of nets dropped into shallow waters, the droning chants of monks that drift over the ridge in the late afternoon. There's a small shrine tucked into the forest edge, where people hang wooden plaques with requests, some for good harvests, others for less, back pain. A few are a little darker. One from last week reads, "Please stop the earth from shaking again." You pretend not to notice that one, because the earth has been shaking, not violently, not yet, but with strange, creeping persistence. Little pulses that make the tea tremble in your cup or jostle a rice bowl when no one's touching the table. At first, people joke about it. Then they stop joking. One elder mutters that it's the gods testing everyone's patience. Another insists it's just foxes dancing underground. Foxes get blamed for a lot, honestly. You don't say much. You keep doing your chores, cleaning fish, fixing your roof, trading dried squid for millet. If the earth wants to dance, let it. You've got laundry to fold. This is a world without weather reports. No one warns you that deep beneath the ocean, a tectonic plate is slowly grinding itself under another. There's no radar, no Richter scale, and certainly no tsunami watch crawling across a screen. All you have is the sky, the water, and your neighbour's increasingly bad dreams. One morning the sea looks off. The tide is wrong just a little. Fishermen argue about it quietly, pointing at how the waves are forming strange diagonal lines. The old woman who sells persimmons says she hasn't seen the birds fly like that in 20 years. But people shrug. What else is new? You spend the afternoon helping a friend rebuild a fence the wind took down last week. The boards are warped, and one of them has a huge splinter shaped like a dragon's tongue. You joke about it, and for a moment, the world feels steady again. But that night you wake up sweating. Not from the heat, it's the sound, or the absence of sound. Even the crickets have gone silent. You sit up. The air feels thick, heavy, like the sky's been holding its breath. A gentle tremor rolls through the floor. You barely notice it. You lie back down. Historians still argue whether the villagers of this era truly connected the shaking earth with the sea's behaviour. Some believe folklore warned of ocean withdrawal after tremors, while others say the idea of a tsunami as a distinct event hadn't fully formed yet. It's not like people gathered for safety briefings. But patterns exist, even when words don't. You've seen enough weirdness in the last few weeks to know something's off. Your cousin says she saw carp flipping in shallow tide pools where the water should have been waist deep. Your uncle refuses to eat fish caught this week. saying they taste like ghost salt. A travelling monk, one of those wandering types who chant sutras for coins, passed through yesterday. He looked at the beach and muttered a phrase you can't forget. The dragon stirs in its sleep. You laugh about it, but not too loud. At sunset, the wind shifts. It blows in from the east, dragging with it the smell of dead seaweed and something else. Something iron-like, almost metallic. You can't place it. Your dog whines and refuses to come inside. You leave the door open. That evening, the horizon looks wrong. The clouds don't move, they just hover, like they're watching. There's a red tint to everything. Someone starts a fire down by the water. You hear laughter, then shouting, then nothing. The next morning the sky is clear, too clear. Not a single cloud, the sea is flat, glassy, motionless. And that's worse than waves, much worse. You go down to the beach and others follow. Nobody speaks. A few kids run ahead, chasing crabs between the rocks. You notice the water has receded, a lot. Fish wriggle in sandbars where yesterday there were boats. Someone picks up a flopping snapper and laughs nervously. You squint at the far horizon. There's a line there, a dark one. It's not a boat, but you don't feel afraid, not yet. You just feel unsure. The way you feel when you forget something important but don't know what. You tell yourself it's fine, that maybe this is normal, that maybe the earth is just stretching. Your neighbour's kid builds a tiny sandcastle right where the sea used to be. You watch him silently. That's how the day ends, with everyone looking the wrong direction. The sun hangs low like a coin in warm tea, and you're standing ankle deep in what used to be the ocean. The village behind you creaks with the gentle sounds of evening life. Wooden sandals clapping against the stone paths, a mother scolding her child for stealing pickled plums, a bamboo ladle clinking against a basin in the distance. But here, on the exposed seafloor, it's strangely silent. You crouch to examine a cluster of stranded fish twitching against the sand. There's something oddly intimate about it, like seeing the ocean's secrets spilled at your feet. It feels wrong, but also fascinating. You aren't the only one who thinks so. A dozen villagers are scattered along the shoreline, murmuring to each other, poking jellyfish with sticks, collecting shells they normally wouldn't be able to reach. You catch a scent you don't expect, something sour, like fermented soy but sharper. A woman beside you mutters that the earth smells sick. You think she's being dramatic. Later that night, around the communal fire pit, someone brings it up again. The tremors, the low tides, the fish with cloudy eyes. The village elder sips his tea for a long time before saying anything. "This happened once," he murmurs. "Long ago, my grandfather remembered it. He said the sea took a deep breath." "And then what?" someone asks. The elder sets down his cup. "No one who saw the rest lived to tell it." That quiets everyone. For about 3 seconds. Then the rice wine starts flowing again and talk shifts to more cheerful things like, whose neighbour has the ugliest scarecrow? The scarecrow in question has a straw moustache and one eye made from a broken sandal strap. It's a strong contender. You go home later that night full of questions and slightly too much sake. The stars above look like they've been glued onto black silk. You pause before entering your house and press a palm against the wooden frame. It's solid, but you swear you feel it. Breathing, just a little. Life carries on because it has to. The next morning you help your mother repair a rice straw mat that the goats chewed through. You clean some eels, you refill the shrine's water basin and leave a few coins, more out of habit than belief. Shrines matter here. Even if you don't believe in gods with long white beards or demons with frog eyes, you still bow at the Torii gate out of respect. The local kami, the spirits, are said to watch over the fields, the mountains, the reviewers, even the particularly grumpy chestnut tree near the bathhouse. People whisper that the kami are restless lately. The offerings go missing too quickly. One fox statue was found turned around, facing the forest. That's not supposed to happen, so when another tremor hits that afternoon, it feels almost like punctuation. It starts gentle, like a cat walking across the floor, then stronger. The water basin outside begins to rattle. A wooden ladle falls in with a thunk. You freeze mid-step, one hand still holding a bundle of scallions, and then everything sways. The entire village shifts like it's been set adrift on a raft. Roof tiles clatter. Dried fish fall from their hooks. You hear someone scream, but it's far away and oddly muffled, like shouting through water. You grab a post to steady yourself. It doesn't help. The post sways with you. There's no warning, no crescendo. Just this strange, sickening roll. People stumble into the street. Chickens squawk and scatter like leaves in a storm. A pot of miso soup crashes to the floor inside your neighbour's home, painting the walls like a soggy explosion. And just as quickly, it stops. Not gently, abruptly, like a puppet master dropped all the strings. Everything stills. Dust floats in the air. A baby begins to cry. You're still gripping the post, and your knuckles are white. Someone nearby is laughing too loudly, too nervously. Another person mutters a chant under their breath, over and over. Something about ancestors. You think about joining in. You don't. Instead, you walk toward the centre of the village where a crowd is gathering. The elder is already there, flanked by a monk who lives part-time in a nearby cave, part-time in other people's rice stores. The monk looks rattled. That's never good. "This is no fox dance," the elder says, voice shaking. "This is deeper." The monk agrees. He says the earth has shifted its bones, that we must perform purification, that the spirits are not pleased. It's hard to know whether you believe him, but he starts chanting anyway and everyone bows. Some villagers bring water, others rice. A few children toss in pebbles like they're playing a game. Someone suggests painting fresh protective symbols on the houses. Someone else says it's all nonsense. Historians still argue whether villagers in 15th century Japan truly understood seismic precursors, or whether rituals were more about calming fear than preventing disaster. Either way, the rituals begin. By sunset, the entire town smells like incense and grilled radish. You join a line of people headed to the beach to scatter salt in the surf. The tide is still out, too far out. The waterline looks like it was peeled back with a spoon. You want to ask how long it's been like that, but no one wants to hear the answer. Halfway through the ritual, the monk drops his prayer beads. Everyone freezes. The beads scatter across the sand like spilled teeth. It's considered a bad omen. The monk tries to laugh it off. No one joins in. At night, while cleaning up fish bones and sweeping ash from the shrine, you overhear someone say that the temple bell cracked last year. That's another omen. Everything is an omen lately. You lie down on your straw mat and try to sleep, but your house creaks more than usual, and the dog keeps barking at the north wall. You finally drift off, listening to the sound of a neighbour sobbing into her sleeves. Somewhere the sea is holding its breath. You wake up to birdsong, but it's off. Not the normal kind. There's no rhythm, no morning chorus, just scattered, frantic chirps like someone dropped a bag of flutes onto the roof. You sit up slowly, spine stiff from your straw bedding. Everything feels hungover, even though you didn't drink. Your tea kettle's already warm. That's your mother's doing. She's been up since before the sun, sweeping ash from the walkway, as if that can somehow scrub away the anxiety still thick in the air. She won't talk about the shaking, she just says, "Eat something," and hands you a rice ball so tight it could probably be used as a weapon. Breakfast tastes fine, but not good, not real, like it was made inside a dream. Then it happens. Mid-morning, just as the fishing boats are returning with their catch, or at least what little they manage to scoop from a retreating ocean, the earth moves again. This time it doesn't build slowly. There's no courteous warning tremble, no gentle nudge. One moment you're chewing a piece of dried daikon, and the next your teeth nearly bite through your tongue. The ground doesn't just shake, it lurches, violently, like the entire coast just slipped off the shelf of the world. The tea spills, the mat buckles, somewhere behind you hear the distinct terrible crash of something heavy meeting tile. Your neighbour's heirloom lacquer chest, maybe, or his dignity. Outside people are screaming, not the "I stubbed my toe" kind, the gut-pulled primal kind that doesn't require translation. You stagger to the doorframe and grab hold. Your arms are shaking almost as much as the walls. The house groans, literally groans, like a giant with a toothache. A beam cracks above you. Dust falls into your hair. You remember, dimly, that people say you're supposed to stand in a doorway. You wonder if that's a myth that won't be invented for another 500 years. You consider bolting outside, but then you see it. The shrine across the way. Your shrine, the one you clean every third day, rocking. Not swaying. Rocking. Like a cradle, only more terrifying. The stone fox statues up front have lost their red bibs. One of them slides off the base and lands in the dirt with a thud. A merchant runs past your door barefoot, clutching a screaming chicken under one arm. Another man tries to hold up a collapsing wall with his back. That doesn't go well. Then you hear it, a low, guttural sound, like the belly of the world just cleared its throat. It's not thunder. Thunder comes from above. This is below, deeper. The quake lasts longer than it should. Maybe a minute, maybe 3, but time doesn't work right when the ground isn't cooperating. When it finally stops, the silence is somehow worse than the noise. You blink. The world feels off-kilter. People stumble out of houses like sleepwalkers. Faces pale, clothes torn, a child clutches a rice scoop like a doll. You see a roof that used to be on, one house now resting on another. And all around is the cell of broken things. Here's your mainstream history fact. This kind of quake likely mirrors what modern seismologists now call a mega-thrust earthquake, a rupture along the Nankai Trough off the coast of Japan. Records from this era are fragmentary, but later centuries document tsunamis following similar seismic patterns. This is one of those. Back in your village, people begin doing what people always do after a disaster. Counting things, counting heads, counting injuries, counting how many beams fell where. Someone's arm is broken, another person can't find his wife. Group of women tend to a boy who won't stop shaking. You join in where you can, pulling a fallen shutter off a collapsed stall, righting a food barrel, offering water to someone whose hands won't stop trembling. Then from the ridge above the village someone yells. At first no one hears him. Then they do. He's pointing at the sea. You scramble up the narrow path beside the temple steps and crest the hill. What you see is wrong. It's not just that the water has receded again, it's that it's gone. The bay, once a calm blue bowl of waves and lazy tide pools, is now a vast, eerie plain of exposed seafloor. Boats sit stranded like forgotten toys. Crabs scuttle across ridges of coral that haven't seen daylight in centuries. The air smells ancient, like sulphur and rust and mouldy shells. One man gasps, "It's breathing in." Another says, "It's the dragon." You're not sure who's right, or if either is, and yet nobody runs. Maybe it's disbelief, maybe it's wonder, maybe it's just that you've never been taught what a tsunami is, let alone how to survive one. The word doesn't exist in your dialect yet, so you just stand there. Some villagers creep closer to the exposed seabed, collecting stranded fish. Children chase after an octopus, trying its best to sprint back to nowhere. A dog howls once and takes off into the trees. Someone says it looks like a miracle. Someone else says it feels like a trap. You stay rooted to the spot. You know something's coming. You can't name it, but you feel it. It's like the moment before a sneeze, like a held breath, like a story that hasn't reached its twist yet. One old woman whispers, "The wave is waiting." Historians still debate whether any warnings were ever truly understood by common people during pre-modern tsunamis. Some chronicles mention people fleeing to higher ground after strong quakes. Others describe entire fishing communities washed away, their final thoughts likely ones of confusion rather than fear. You want to believe there's still time, but the gulls are gone, and gulls don't usually miss a chance to feast. You stare at the horizon again. The sky there is darker than before, but not storm dark. And then you notice the line. A long black line, growing taller. You stare at the black line on the horizon like it's a trick of the light. Like if you blink long enough, it'll resolve into a storm cloud or a flock of birds or a veil of sea fog playing dress up. But it doesn't. It gets taller. At first, people don't react. Some are still picking up fish, some arguing over whether it's safe to drag a boat back to shore. The merchant with the chicken is now without both. It wriggled free and took off toward the woods. You envy that chicken. The old monk climbs the ridge behind you, slowly using his staff. His robes are torn, one sandal missing, but his voice, when he speaks, is clear. "Down the mountain," he says softly. "Down into the sea comes the mountain." You think it's just a saying until you realise he's pointing at that black wall down on the horizon. And then, finally, someone says it. Tsunami. You've never heard the word before, but it fits in your mouth like something you've always known. It's moving now. Not like a wave at the shore. This is not a roll, not a curl. This is not playful. This is not surfable. This is the sea made vertical, the sea made angry, the sea made into a single silent curtain that wants very badly to meet you. Still, not everyone runs. Some people freeze. Some walk as if they're dreaming. A fisherman kneels on the ground and starts praying. One family forms a circle and holds hands, staring at the wall of water like it's a relative arriving for dinner. You run. Not heroically, not gracefully, just stupidly, clumsily, crashing through brush and startled chickens and someone's drying laundry as you bolt toward the nearest incline. The mountain path is narrow, steep, and covered in loose gravel that wants you to fail. You slip, you scrape your knee, you taste blood in your mouth and don't remember biting anything. The monk follows behind you, somehow faster than he should be for someone that old. You realise you're crying and don't know when that started either. Behind you, the sound starts, not a roar, not yet. First it's like wind, then a rushing, then a deep, endless rang. Like the ocean itself has split open. Now people run. Everywhere. Some still don't. Some stare at the incoming wave with the slack-jawed amazement reserved for miracles and disasters. One woman throws herself flat onto the ground and starts apologising to every kami she can remember. Another clutches a doll to her chest like it's a raft. The water hits. From your perch halfway up the slope you see it in horrifying detail. The black wall folds forward. Not like a gentle wave cresting, but like a hand slamming down on a table. And the village is the table. The first impact takes the low buildings. Straw rooftops disintegrate like spiderwebs. Wooden homes lift off the ground like they never belonged there. The water doesn't pause. It doesn't spread neatly across roads. It surges, rolls, piles onto itself, carrying debris the size of horses, some of which are horses. You see your home vanish in 3 seconds. The water keeps climbing. It devours gardens, grave markers, storehouses, carts, fences, and at least one very confused goat. A sake barrel floats past, then splits in 2. And the sound now, it's not a sound really. It's pressure. It's everywhere. It's inside your teeth. You duck behind a stone outcropping as the spray reaches higher ground. The air smells like salt and splinters and something hot and bitter. Fear, maybe. Your clothes are soaked just from mist. Your legs are shaking, your heart doing things hearts shouldn't. Below you, the sea has become a churned graveyard of roofs and logs, and nameless things you can't focus on for too long. You hear screaming, you try not to look. But you do. You see someone. No, several someones, clinging to a tree swept halfway inland. A man clutches a roof beam like it's a raft. Then the beam flips. The man is gone. Someone beside you throws up. You might too. Later. The monk begins to chant. You don't understand the words, but they steady something inside you. You grip the rock in front of you harder, as if it will anchor your brain. Quirky fact time. Some temples were built on higher elevations specifically because monks believed they should be closer to the heavens, and coincidentally those temples later became some of the safest places during tsunami events. The monks didn't know the science, but maybe they sensed something else. Or maybe they just liked a good view. Your village had no such fortune. It was flat, convenient, close to fish, close to death. There's no siren system, of course, no tsunami wall, no emergency broadcast gear. Just you, the monk, whatever part of your brain hasn't yet given up. The water begins to slow, not stop, just lose momentum. The surge starts to flatten, to spread sideways, to spill out into the rice fields like ink on silk. Then another sound. Crash, snap, shatter. Trees splitting, beams falling, and somewhere a bell ringing. Not a temple bell. The old merchant's dinner bell, carried who knows how far, now clanging against the rocks like it's trying to wake the gods. Historians still argue whether this wave came in one massive strike or multiple pulses. Some accounts describe a retreat, then a second, a deadlier surge. Others insist it was all one towering nightmare. But from where you are, it doesn't matter. You've seen enough. Eventually the noise fades. You hear water dripping from trees. The wind sighs. A roof tile thuds softly into the mud below. And then, birds. One chirps, another answers. Life, as usual, pretending nothing happened. You sit back against the stone, shaking. Your hands are raw, your knees bloodied. You smell like brine and fear and maybe someone else's miso. But you're alive. You glance at the monk. He's watching the sky. Still breathing? He asks. You nod. Then he says something. You'll remember forever. The sea always takes, but it never forgets. The world is soggy salts. You don't know how long you've been sitting there, hunched against the rock. Minutes, hours. It could be next Tuesday. Your body has gone stiff. Your breath smells like seawater and panic. Your toes are soaked. Your fingers have forgotten how to unclench. Below you, what used to be your village is now an unfamiliar lagoon. Brackish and brown, plastered with hunks of wood, twisted rope, broken barrels, the occasional sleeve or sandal, and fish. So many fish. Dead ones mostly. Some split open on rocks, others wriggling in shallow muddy pools. One flops feebly on a thatched roof, now lying sideways in a rice field. A child might have once lived in that house. You try not to think about that part. The sea didn't just come and go. It rearranged things. It took your past and tried to remix it with whatever junk it found on the ocean floor. You notice a door frame, just the frame. No walls, no door, just 4 pieces of wood upright, standing like some stubborn portal to nothing. Nearby, a crate floats by. Inside are pickled radishes. They survived. Good for them. You finally stand up. Your knees protest. Your back cracks. The monk has wandered off somewhere behind you, probably to check on other survivors, or to speak with the forest spirits, or to sit dramatically on a cliff and look wise. You pick your way down the slope, skirting mudslides and fallen branches. The path is different now. Everything is. Trees are tilted, brush is flattened, and somewhere a tree trunk is jammed into the side of the bathhouse like a chopstick stuck in tofu. There's no road, no clean path, just sludge and silence. You reach the village, or what's left of it. The water is waist deep in some places, ankle deep in others. It moves sluggishly, like it's reluctant to leave. Floating among the ruins are bowls, buckets, bamboo fans, sandals, seaweed, and an entire futon drifting gently like a raft for a ghost. You hear someone call out. You turn and see them. A few survivors moving cautiously through the wreckage. One of them is the scarecrow guy, now missing a shoe and some of his eyebrows. Another is the woman who sold sea pickles, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. It meows. She smiles through tears. No one says much. What is there to say? You gather on what used to be the village square, now a kind of muddy lake. People count heads. Some are missing, some return limping from the forest. One boy emerges from a fishing boat wedged in the upper branches of a cedar tree. No one asks how. There's a baby crying somewhere. That at least sounds familiar. And then someone points at the sea. It's retreating again. But not all the way. Not like before. This is a slow drain. A sulking slide back to where it came from. Like the ocean is ashamed. Or satisfied. It leaves behind a mess so thick it becomes landscape. A new coastline made of ruin. You step over a rice barrel and find yourself staring down at the village well. The lid is gone. The water inside looks wrong, dark and oily. Someone says they heard voices in it the night before. Whispers. You decide not to look too long. Here's a quirky tidbit. In many coastal Japanese towns, wells were believed to be passageways for spirits, benevolent or otherwise. After disasters, people sometimes avoided them for years, just in case something came back out. You help right an overturned shrine post. It's crooked, splintered, but still has the little rope tied around it. You retie it, tighter this time. Someone behind you mutters a prayer. You find your house, or what used to be your house. The roof is gone. 3 walls are missing. The floor is soggy, but miraculously your rice bucket survived. It's soaked and probably ruined, but it's there. You laugh. Or maybe you cry. It sounds like both. That's when it hits you. You're still here. You didn't get pulled out to sea, you didn't get flattened by a beam, you didn't vanish, you survived. Barely. Your neighbour, the one with the loud sneeze and the quiet wife, isn't so lucky. You find what's left of his garden, a single daikon still upright, the rest gone, and yet, amidst the wreckage, people begin doing things, picking up, calling names, tying cloth around wounds, righting pots and checking baskets. One man starts hammering a roof beam into place even though he no longer has a roof. Another woman lays out soaked herbs on a rock to dry. You find a comb. Yours? Maybe. You pocket it anyway. It's a small thing, but it's proof that something stayed. Historians still debate how organised disaster response was in the 15th century. Records are vague. Some say temples took charge, others mention regional lords sending aid months later if at all. But here now no one is coming. There are no messengers, no couriers, no relief wagons. You are the relief. A man begins calling names. People, houses, even animals. He gets to your name. You raise your hand. He nods. That's it. That's the ceremony. At sunset, the survivors gather around a fire. It's weak, smoky. Everything's too wet. But it's warm. Someone hands you a roasted fish. It tastes like smoke and grit. You eat it anyway. The monk appears again, carrying a bundle of salvaged scrolls. He lays them out like treasures, checking for damage. A few are intact. One has a frog doodled in the margin. Sacred wisdom, he says, holding it up solemnly, and a toad. That gets a laugh, a real one. Above you, stars begin to emerge. The sky is clear again. You lie back on a rock, staring at them. A few glimmer like rice grains. One blinks, or maybe that's just your eyes playing tricks. The sea is still now, but you don't trust it. The next morning the birds return in full force. They hop along branches, peck at soggy straw and argue loudly in the eaves of what used to be the village headman's storehouse. It's hard not to resent them, honestly. Flitting around like nothing happened, as if the world didn't try to unmake itself yesterday. You wake with mud in your ears and the vague memory of a dream about fish apologising for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Your legs ache, your stomach growls, and everything smells like wet charcoal and regret. The monk is already up, of course. He never seems to sleep. He's tending to a pile of salvageable lumber with a group of young men, all of them moving slowly, deliberately, the way people do when their brains haven't caught up with reality yet. The wave is gone, but it left behind a silence thicker than sea mist. You don't know what to do. You stand, stretch, pick your way through the soggy remains of your garden, what's left of it. There's one cucumber plant clinging to life in a mound of debris. You consider it a personal victory. You even bow to it. Then down the path you hear the first argument of the new world. It's two neighbours, both soaked to their knees, shouting about a boat. Apparently one accuses the other of stealing it during the flood. The other insists they borrowed it to rescue a grandmother clinging to a tree. Voices rise. Someone throws a sandal. Another person laughs too loudly and then starts crying instead. You back away. Elsewhere, people are sorting through the wreckage, deciding what to save, what to burn, and what to pretend never existed. One woman calmly picks out family heirlooms from the mud. First a teacup, then a flute, then a wedding comb. Her face doesn't change. You help gather bamboo poles that can be reused for shelter. Each piece is sticky, splintered, and somehow heavier than it should be. Your hands blister, your shoulders burn. No one speaks much. The quiet is starting to feel like another kind of flood. But then someone screams, not in pain, in warning. You look up and see it. Not a new wave, thank every god and ancestor for that. But the sea is acting strange again. The tide is pulling weirdly sideways as if the ocean itself is uncertain, still deciding what shape to take. Someone yells to stay off the beach. Everyone listens. You retreat to the upper slope again, gathering with others on the same ground where you watched the destruction yesterday. Some of you sit, some stand. No one makes eye contact. One child asks if the wave is coming back. The monk says gently, not today. Still, nobody moves for a long time. Historians still argue whether villagers fully grasp the threat of aftershocks and secondary waves. In some records, people fled for the hills again hours. or even days after the main tsunami, responding to shifting tides with practiced terror. In others, they simply stayed put, too broken to move. You decide to stay alert, just in case. Later, the monk gathers everyone to the ruined shrine, or what's left of it. One stone lantern still stands, slightly tilted like it's drunk. He lights incense. He chants. And then he lets everyone speak. One by one, people share names. Not of survivors, of those who didn't come back, the girl who braided flowers into her sandals, the boy who loved singing to frogs, the old man who once claimed he could wrestle a deer, though no one ever asked him to prove it. You say nothing, but you think of your neighbour who lent you a cooking pot once and asked nothing in return, of your cousin's little dog that hated rice balls but loved pickled plums. The ocean didn't take just lives, it took details. Back in the village, if you can still call it that, arguments continue over who gets which dry boards, over how much rice is left, over whether the gods are angry or just forgetful. Some suggest heading inland to find help. Others say abandoning the coast would be sacrilege. We were born here, they argue. We'll die here too. You wonder how many of them meant that literally. As the sun climbs higher, the heat returns. The sea steams where it touches the wreckage. Flies swarm. A bucket of eels starts to rot. The people start to snap. Voices rise again. You feel it in your own body, that jittery, raw-edged need to do something, anything, so you leave. You don't say where you're going. You just start walking toward the path that leads to the shrine on the next hill over, the one with the weird statues and the famously stubborn goat. No one stops you. Halfway there, you see a trail of footprints in the mud. Not human, probably a boar or a very confused tanuki. You follow it a little, just for the distraction. You come across a pile of seaweed arranged in the vague shape of a person. Not creepy, just oddly deliberate. You walk faster. At the shrine, the goat is gone. The statues are still there, though. One's missing an arm, another has seaweed hanging off its ear like a bad haircut. You offer a coin, though you're not sure why. Then you offer a second one, just in case the first one got lost. You sit for a while, watch the clouds, think about yesterday, think about tomorrow. Then you think about lunch and realise you haven't had any. You chew on a piece of dried root you found in your sleeve and decide it's probably edible. When you return to the village, something feels softer. Someone started setting up makeshift tents. Another person is roasting fish over a low fire. The argument over the boat seems to have ended. One of the men has a bandage on his head, and the other is feeding him sea pickles with a very defeated expression. You laugh. You don't mean to, but you do. Then someone hands you a bucket of water and points at a half-buried rice pot. You nod and get to work. You don't know if another wave will come, but for now you can clean mud from a pot. You can build something, even if it's small, even if it's not enough. You wake to the sound of someone hammering. It's a good sound, steady, predictable, human. After days of chaos, it feels like a lullaby. You lie there on your makeshift mat, half covered in a reed blanket that smells faintly of pickled plum, and just listen. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap. It's the rhythm of people refusing to give up. Outside, the sky is pale. A light breeze rustles the half-hung drying nets. Someone is singing badly but with spirit, and someone else is laughing in a way that's almost normal. You stretch, yawn, and notice you don't ache quite as much today. Your fingers still hurt, but now it's the kind of hurt that says you use them, not that you're about to lose them. Then you hear the water again. Not the crash of it. Not yet. Just the gentle lapping. The too gentle quiet that made your stomach flip the last time. You step outside your lean-to and squint toward the shore. The sea is still, but now you're suspicious of stillness. You walk down to what used to be the main path. Or maybe it was a ditch, or maybe a pigsty. The tsunami rearranged things so thoroughly that you're not entirely sure where anything ever was. A chicken strolls past, looking deeply confused but also extremely self-important. Near the beach, others are gathering. Some just stand and watch the ocean. Others pick through debris, looking for anything that can be repurposed. Wood, rope, half-burned baskets, even a mostly intact washboard. That's when you see it. Drifting in with the tide, part of a roof. Not yours, not anyone's from your village as far as you can tell. The design's all wrong, painted tiles, fancy trim, a style more fitting for a town 2 valleys over. And on it, tangled in seaweed and rope, a straw sandal. Tiny. Child-sized. Nobody says anything, you all just look at it. The roof segment spins slowly in the water, bumping softly against a rock, making a dull thunk sound that somehow feels louder than the wave itself. You want to turn away, but your feet stay rooted. Here's your mainstream historical fact. During major tsunamis in pre-modern Japan, entire sections of villages, people, homes, livestock, could drift for miles. Some debris-crossed bays, others were carried up rivers. In rare cases, rafts with survivors were found days later, stranded in trees or tangled in fishing nets far from home. You stare at that roof piece for a long time. Eventually, someone wades in silently and pulls it ashore. The sandal is removed and set gently on a stone. A small act, but it feels like a ceremony. Later, in a dry patch near the shrine steps, people start to gather what little timber they have and begin rebuilding. Not houses, too soon for that, but platforms, dry places to sit, workstations for food prep. Everything's temporary. But the act itself is what matters. You help raise one of the platforms. It's held together with twine and sheer spite. The bamboo creaks ominously every time. Someone shifts their weight. Someone jokes that if the gods want better architecture, they can lend a hand. The monk just smiles. Then the silence returns again. This time it's not from grief. It's anticipation. The sea has gone flat again. Perfectly eerily flat. No tide, no wavelets, not even a ripple across the surface. The fish stalls at the beach edge start to dry oddly fast. A dog begins whining. The chickens, already chaotic creatures at the best of times, suddenly scatter inland. Everyone stops. You squint at the horizon again, and there it is, a line. You want to believe it's just mist, or cloud, or a trick of tired eyes. But it's not. It's taller than before. You hear someone whisper, "Not again." Someone else says, "Run." There's no debate this time. No hesitation. People move. You grab a child by the hand, someone else's, doesn't matter, and run for the ridge. Your legs remember the path from last time. You vault fallen logs, duck under tilted torii gates, avoid the slippery spot near the stream without even thinking. Behind you the sea speaks again, louder this time. The sound is like paper tearing if the paper were made of boulders, and screams. You glance back once, just once. It's smaller than the last wave, but not by much. It moves like a wall that forgot it wasn't invited. You and the others reach higher ground. Some stumble, some crawl. One man drops a sack of rice but keeps running. Another woman clutches a cat under her arm, its eyes wide and furious. Then the wave hits. Again. It doesn't obliterate what's left. It scours. It pulls away what little had been rebuilt. The platforms, the workstations, the sandals. Even the chicken coop that had miraculously survived the first time gets flung halfway into a pine tree and explodes in a squat cloud of feathers. This second wave isn't as tall, but it's cruel. It rakes, it yanks, it unbuilds. It feels personal. After it recedes, you don't speak. You just watch the foam trail back to the sea, like a thief slipping out the door with the last of your valuables. Historians still debate how many waves typically followed the initial strike during 15th century tsunamis. Some areas saw 3, others 5. Some people claim a whole day passed before the final surge. There's no universal rule. The ocean does what it wants. Back on your ridge, the silence is back. You sit on a tree stump, soaked again, panting. The child next to you stares at the sea and says, "It's angry." You don't disagree. Someone offers you a plum, you eat it without tasting. It's soft and sour and tastes like yesterday. Then quietly the monk says, "That was the last one." "How do you know?" someone asks. He shrugs. "I don't." But no more waves come that day, and when night falls, it's almost peaceful. Almost. Night falls slowly, like a silk curtain being lowered over a broken stage. You sit with your knees drawn up to your chest, arms wrapped around them, watching the stars flicker to life one by one. Each one feels like a tiny candle lit for someone you lost. The second wave didn't leave much behind. The rebuilt platforms are gone, so is the makeshift soup station, the drying mats, the battered storage basket someone claimed was basically waterproof just hours ago. You're not even mad about it. You just feel hollow, scraped out like the inside of a melon. There's no fire tonight, no dry wood, just small lanterns flickering around the shrine, each one dim, each one guarded like it's the last spark in the world. You're cold, wet, tired, and still alive. It's the weirdest part of all, really, that you keep waking up. That breath keeps happening, that your stomach keeps demanding rice, even though rice keeps vanishing into the sea. Somewhere to your left, someone is snoring softly under a tarp. A few people murmur in low voices. The monk chants again, his words soft and distant, like a lullaby written by ghosts. You sleep. And when you wake, the sea is, once again, still. But you don't trust it. No one does. That trust was taken, pulled out with the first wave and smashed by the second. You help gather whatever wood hasn't floated away. Even bits of broken beams are precious now. Someone figures out how to tie 2 planks together with soaked rice straw. It looks like it shouldn't work, but somehow it does. Welcome to tsunami engineering. You've stopped asking whose belongings you're picking up. Ownership doesn't matter anymore. If it's dry, if it floats, if it burns, it's everyone's. You find a bowl, not yours, but the glaze reminds you of your aunt's laughter. You clean it and tuck it under your arm. Then you find the eel. It's just lying there, on a patch of damp gravel between 2 pieces of collapsed fence, half covered in seaweed. It twitches when you poke it with the stick. Eels are complicated. Some people say they're lucky. Others say they carry the souls of the drowned. This one just looks tired. You pick it up gently and place it in a bucket of brackish water someone salvaged from a barrel. Later someone roasts it. You eat eel for breakfast. It's chewy, a little fishy. You don't care. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval Japanese communities considered eels sacred after natural disasters. Not because of religion necessarily, but because they survived. Slippery, hard to kill, and somehow always still flopping around long after other fish were gone. Eels became symbols of stubbornness, which is, ironically, what's keeping your village from dissolving. You spend the rest of the morning dragging debris toward a central pile. The idea is to sort it, Wood, cloth, metal. Questionably useful things like broken stools and rope with too many knots. Someone draws a line in the dirt and declares it a road. You walk around it out of respect. You meet a girl near the shrine, young, maybe 10 or 11, sifting through a collapsed grain bin. She says she's looking for her cat. You don't ask if she's seen the second wave. She shows you a stone she found in the mud. It has a perfect spiral in it. She says it's the shell of a creature from the time before rice. You believe her. People begin organising. Not well, not with any real system, but it's something. The elder, miraculously alive, though now walking with a stick he claims was a gift from a god, gathers the villagers to discuss rebuilding. Some want to stay, others want to leave. We need high ground, someone says. We need rice, says another. We need to sleep without water in our beds, adds a third. All reasonable points, but then someone mentions spirits. Did you hear the crying? A man asks. Last night, in the trees? No, someone else says. It was under the ground. Another person mutters about babies in the well again. You stiffen. The monk clears his throat and says simply, grief echoes. It's vague enough to work as an explanation. Still, people are spooked, and grief does echo. You find yourself thinking about your neighbour's sandals again, about your cousin's laugh, about the sound of rice steaming, and how it always made the house smell like home. There are no more smells like that now, just salt, smoke and mud. You help raise a lean-to for one of the elders. It's lopsided, leaks on one side, and the roof is tied together with what looks suspiciously like old fishing line. But it stands, barely. You call it a miracle. That night the sky is clear again. Too clear, stars sparkle like they're mocking you. Someone starts singing a folk song about a turtle who wants to be a mountain. You don't know the words, but you hum along. Then, without warning, a woman near the shrine throws up her hands and yells, "Enough!" Everyone freezes. She points at the sea. "It took my brother, my boat, my house, but not my voice." You half expect a lecture. Instead, someone claps, another joins, then someone laughs. It's a ridiculous moment, but it feels right. The woman bows and walks away, her point made. She may have lost everything, but she's still herself. Historians still argue whether psychological responses to tsunami trauma in medieval Japan were recognised or recorded. Some say villagers turned to ritual, others say they just endured. Either way, people found ways to speak again. And tonight you speak too. You talk about the eel, you talk about the sandal on the roof tile. You talk about the stone with the spiral that might be older than rice. And somewhere in all that talking, you feel something return, not joy, not yet, but something. You look out at the sea, still and black and endless. You don't trust it, but you don't run either. You just sit beside it and wait. You don't know why you walk back to the beach the next morning. Maybe it's habit, maybe it's hope. Maybe you just want to see what the sea looks like after everything it did. Like glancing back at someone who betrayed you just to see if they look sorry. It doesn't. The ocean is glass again. Calm, shiny, mocking. You step carefully between broken beams and sea-drenched bamboo. The ground is soft under your feet, not sand, not mud, just residue. What was? You crouch by a puddle, see your face reflected in the water, and barely recognise it. Hair matted, eyes hollow. A scrape on your cheek you don't remember getting. You look like someone from a story your grandmother might have told, about a fisherman's ghost who never made it home. You try to smile. It doesn't take. A little farther down the shoreline, you find something you hadn't expected. A wooden bath stool. Still upright. Still whole. The ones that usually live inside bathhouses. with rounded edges and 3 squat legs. You laugh a little. This thing survived better than most people did. Then you see it, a body, floating face down in a tidal pool, barely clothed, skin pale and bloated. You freeze, your mouth dries out. A part of your brain goes somewhere very far away. The water ripples gently around it, like it's being cradled. You approach slowly, knees weak. You don't recognize the person. They aren't from your village. You hope they were asleep when it happened. It's hard to describe what that kind of death does to your body. Not just theirs, but yours. The quietness of it, the helplessness. The sea didn't rage this person away, it placed them here. Like an offering, like a reminder. You kneel and offer a whispered chant, just in case they still hear things. Then you step away and try very hard not to throw up. You've been lucky, you know that. And you're starting to realize exactly how lucky. What happens to a body in a flood? It floats, it sinks, it swells, it catches on trees or rooftops or anything that stops the water from taking it farther. Sometimes it vanishes entirely, swallowed into the ocean, never seen again. Other times it washes ashore days later, unrecognizable. Historians and forensic experts much later have catalogued these things in great detail. The way saltwater slows decay, the way the body changes under pressure and time. It's not something people in your time can explain, but you see it now, up close. You walk farther inland, stumbling over a heap of reeds and finding another. A child this time, wrapped in cloth, laid gently on a shrine step. Someone found them before you, placed them here, honoured them. You bow. Others begin arriving slowly, wordlessly, not for the same reason as you. Just to be here, to see, to help, to understand. It's not just about the wave anymore. It's about the aftermath. The things that don't get swept away. The memories that remain stuck between floorboards and bent nails and seawater-soaked sandals. One man, someone you only vaguely know, the sort who used to show up to festivals with rice balls and unsolicited opinions, leans against a post and says quietly, "I think we should bury them." There are murmurs of agreement, but also doubt. How? Where? The ground's still where. The shrine land is sacred. The fields are waterlogged, and there are too many. The monk joins the group, expression unreadable. He says, "We will find places. We will remember them." You watch as the first body is wrapped in fresh cloth and placed on a makeshift sled built from 2 old roof beams. It's not formal, not ritualized, just careful. That's all you can do now. Be careful. You help carry them. You don't know their name. It doesn't matter. You carry them anyway. Later, you return to the village and sit by the fire someone finally managed to coax out of damp twigs and stubborn matches. It's small, smoky, reluctant, like everyone else. Someone says the sea has taken enough. Someone else says it's not done. You believe both. That night you dream of being underwater, not drowning, just waiting, as if the sea has made you its guest. Everything muffled slow. You reach out in the dream, and your fingers graze another hand. You don't know if it's reaching for help or just drifting by. You wake up with seawater on your lips, but there's no sea inside your shelter, just the taste of fear and ash. The next morning a boy, maybe 10, maybe younger, brings something to the shrine. A tooth. Small. Human. Probably his brother's, he says, but he's not sure. He places it in a dish beside the incense bowl and bows. The monk says nothing, just nods once. And then someone else adds a hair comb. Someone else a wooden toy boat. Someone else a ring too big for any finger now but still precious. The dish becomes a shrine inside the shrine. Not for gods, for the people. Historians still argue whether coastal communities of this era created impromptu memorials for the drowned. Some say, yes, rituals were part of everything. Others say, grief stayed quiet, tucked into the folds of daily chores. But here, now, you see it happen. You see mourning take shape one object at a time. It doesn't undo anything, but it means something. At sunset, the sky turns gold and pink and faintly bruised. You watch the water. It's still again. Always still after it finishes its cruelty. You sit on a rock, legs dangling, eel bucket beside you. The eel is gone. Somehow it got out. Slithered away. Back to the sea, probably. Or into the shrine. You're not even mad. You hope it made it. You think of that floating child's sandal again. You think of the tooth in the dish. You think of how much the sea can hold and how much it refuses to give back, but you're still here, breathing, listening, remembering. The smell of salt has soaked into everything. Your clothes, your hair, even your thoughts. It clings, it defines. It won't leave. You wash your hands in the stream, but they still smell like brine. You eat food cooked over clean fire, and still it tastes like the sea. It's strange how quickly a place becomes something else. A village becomes a ruin becomes a memory. And memory, well, memory starts to rot if you don't treat it gently. You sit with a small group around the fire that now lives inside a broken rice barrel, because irony still survives even when architecture does not. Someone's boiling water for tea, the leaves are weak, the pot is dented, but the steam curls like hope. No one talks much anymore, at least not about the wave. Not directly, you speak in symbols. You see that pine tree, someone says, used to stand straight, now it bows to the mountain. I saw a crow eating dried squid from the roof, someone else adds. Clever birds. I dreamed of a fish with a bell tied to its fin. Everyone nods. You don't question dreams now. They're as real as mud. You walk through the remains of what used to be the main street. Though street might be generous. Just a worn path between homes, most of which now resemble forgotten sketches. You step over warped planks and bloated baskets, duck under a broken drying rack, and find yourself standing in front of what's left of your house. 3 support beams remain, half tilted like drunk old friends leaning on each other. A single tatami mat has dried enough to be usable. You drag it outside, sit on it like a throne, and sip from your tea bowl. It's awful tea. It's also the best thing you've had in days. You take stock of what you have left. 1 rice bowl, half a blanket, a cracked cooking pot, 2 usable sandals, and a hair comb that might not even be yours. It's enough. At least for now. Then you notice something. The quiet. Not the same kind of quiet from before. Not the pre-wave, birds are gone, gods are angry kind. This is different. This is exhausted quiet. A quiet that says, we've cried all the tears we can, so now we just have to live. You walk to the edge of what used to be your neighbour's house. You see him. Well, not him, but the place he used to occupy. The space that once held his laugh, his cough, the way he always complained about rice prices like they were personally insulting him. You find a single chopstick in the mud. You wash it. You place it on a clean rock. It feels important. Nearby, 2 children are playing a game with stones. They're not laughing, but they're playing. That counts. You overhear a woman humming while mending a shirt. The needle moves slowly, rhythmically. Her hands are sure. Her voice cracks at one point, but she keeps going. And then someone does something truly strange. They start sweeping, with an actual broom, along a path that no longer connects to anything. Just sweeping, dust, ash, bits of thatch, seaweed. You watch, hypnotized. The wind blows a little harder today. It carries the smell of salt and something new, something green. grass, maybe. Pine needles. A hint of future. You squint toward the shore. The water is calm. Again. But you're done trusting it. You build a small platform out of broken tiles and bamboo poles. Not a home. Not even a roof. Just a place to stand. A dry place. That's all you ask for now. Others see it and copy you. Before long there's a scattered field of these little platforms. Odd, shaky, ugly. But they hold. And that's more than anyone expected. Historians still argue whether any form of architecture adapted immediately after tsunami disasters in the medieval period. Some say yes, elevated storage sheds and mobile shelters. Others say people simply rebuilt what they knew, the way it had always been. But you've learned. You've learned not to trust ground level. You've learned to leave space between the sea and your sleeping mat. That night the monk speaks again. His voice is hoarse, tired, but steady. "We live where we live," he says. "The sea is not our enemy, but it is not our friend either." Someone asks what it is. Then he smiles sadly. "It's the sea. That's enough." You sit beside the fire and watch sparks dance like little souls climbing upward. You realise something. No one has asked the government for help. There is no government. Not in the way you'd understand it. Maybe some distant lord in a castle who doesn't know your name. Maybe a tax collector who'll eventually reappear when the roads dry out. But for now, it's just you. You and the others. The people with blisters on their hands, ash in their hair, and no patience left for shallow prayers. You find a spool of thread and use it to repair the seam in your sleeve. It's not straight, but it's yours. You hum a song, you don't know all the words. That's fine. The eel bucket is still empty, but a small frog has moved in. You let it stay. You start the day by looking for your sandal, not the pair, just the one. You lost it somewhere between the second wave and the panic that followed. It might be in the next village by now, floating nobly like a tiny boat on a great brackish voyage. Or maybe it's under a pile of driftwood a few paces from your door, playing hide and seek with the universe. You find something better, a woven mat, only half rotted, wedged under the remains of a fishing net. You pull it out, shake it off, and decide it's your new roof. Welcome to post-tsunami real estate development. You prop it carefully atop the 4 upright bamboo poles you and your neighbour erected the day before. He still won't speak to you since you borrowed his pot, but he helped anyway. It's not about the pot. Nothing is ever really about the pot. People are rebuilding, sort of, not houses exactly, not yet. That would feel like tempting fate. No one wants to be the first to say, yes, let's get comfortable again. But they are stitching, propping, hammering, bamboo and rope and mud and faith. Faith not in gods, though there are prayers, but in each other, in structure, in something standing upright again. You walk the path toward your old house, not to salvage, not to mourn, just to stand where the kitchen used to be. There's a piece of the paper wall still flapping in the wind, the kind you used to slide open carefully, like a stage curtain. You reach out, brush your fingers along the edge. It's soft, damp. It tears the moment you touch it. You don't flinch, you just let it fall. That wall held laughter once. It kept in the smell of boiled rice and miso. It shaded you when summer sun scorched the yard. It was thin, fragile, always in need of patching. But it held stories. Now it's a scrap. Someone calls for help down the hill. You jog, barefoot, to find a family trying to lift a fallen beam off what used to be their kitchen storehouse. You don't ask who they are, you just help. The beam is heavy, waterlogged, wrapped in vines and seaweed. You grunt. Someone slips, someone curses. A little boy tries to help and nearly topples into the mud. He laughs. No one tells him to stop. You eventually get the beam upright and drag it off to the pile that's quietly being renamed Maybe Useful Later. Everyone has one of those piles now. While walking back, you find your mother's old teacup. Chipped, muddy, but intact. You sit down on a dry plank and hold it in your hands for a long time. You don't remember how the last conversation with her ended. It probably wasn't dramatic. Maybe you complained about your back. Maybe she told you to stop picking your teeth in public. You hope it was that. You place the cup in your shelter's corner. Not for drinking, for remembering. That's when someone starts whispering again. Not about teacups, about ghosts. You sigh. Not because you don't believe in them, but because of course ghosts are ours. Next, you overhear the fisherman muttering about hearing footsteps on his roof last night. Another says she heard a baby crying from the well again. You stop peeling bark for rope and listen harder. The monk doesn't deny it. Instead, he lights incense and says, "The dead need a way out, or they'll knock." You hate how that makes sense. Here's a mainstream historical fact. After large-scale disasters in medieval Japan, ghost stories surged, not just as entertainment, but as social memory. People explained the unexplainable by saying the spirits lingered. They heard wails in the wind, saw footprints in dry ash, heard names whispered by rivers. It helped, and it scared the hell out of them. You spend part of the evening repairing a water bucket with what might be eel twine. It smells extremely eelish, but it holds water. You tie a knot, feel semi-competent, and raise it triumphantly above your head. No one notices, except a small girl across the path who claps once, then goes back to rearranging rocks in the shape of her family's house. Later you walk to the well. You don't mean to, your feet just take you. You stand by the edge, look down, water stares back. No babies, no whales, just stillness. You place a pinch of rice at the rim, just in case. That night, the air feels heavier than usual. No wind, no birds, no insects. You lie on your mat and listen to the sound of damp cloth shifting. A nearby neighbour snores in a way that sounds like two frogs arguing. And then you hear it. A knock. Not on your door, you don't have a door, but somewhere wood on wood, thump, thump. You sit up. The monk's shelter is dimly lit. You see his silhouette. He doesn't move, but he speaks. Don't answer, not until morning. You lie back down. You pretend you didn't hear it. Pretend your heart isn't pounding. Quirky tidbit. Some villagers after disasters carved small Jizo statues for each of the dead, whether or not a body was found. These small rounded stone guardians became anchors for grief. You think about building one tomorrow, maybe out of clay, or mud, or rice paste if you're desperate. You fall asleep slowly. You dream of paper walls that breathe, of ghost feet walking carefully so they don't wake you, of the sea trying to speak, but all it can say is sorry. In the dream your house is whole again, but you live outside it, watching, and the light inside is moving. You wake before the sun, not because of birdsong, those traitorous little flappers are still asleep, but because something feels unsettled. Like your bones know the day will ask more from them than they want to give. You stretch slowly, quietly. The air is cool and damp. Your shelter roof creaks as dew drips from its corners. A spider has constructed a full empire overnight between two of your support poles. You admire her work, then gently ruin it trying to stand up. The village, what's left of it, is just beginning to stir. Smoke curls from a fire someone bravely tried to relight. Someone coughs, a baby squawks, a dog barks twice, then regrets the energy and lies back down. You walk to the shrine with a handful of rice and a small smooth stone you found near the stream. You place them gently in the memorial bowl, the one now overflowing with small tokens, a sandal strap, a folded note, a comb, a frog-shaped hairpin, and something that might be a tooth. No one knows for sure, no one asks, and as you turn to leave you see the monk. He's standing at the edge of the trees, looking toward the sea. His robes are clean again. How? No one knows. Monks operate by their own laundry physics. You approach. He says nothing at first, then nods toward the water. "Still," he says. "Too still," you reply. "Maybe," he shrugs. You stand there together, staring at a body of water that could murder you again at any moment, and you both sip weak tea from wooden cups like it's just another Tuesday. Then you hear it again, the whispers. They drift from the well, from behind the shrine, from the gaps in the broken houses. Always quiet, always just out of reach. Sometimes they sound like names, sometimes like babies crying. Once, you could have sworn you heard a lullaby your mother used to hum when she cleaned fish. You don't want to believe it. But more and more people are hearing them too. One woman says she saw her husband in the fog. He smiled, waved, then vanished when she blinked. Another insists her child return to her tent every night, asking for sweet potatoes. You nod politely. You don't laugh. Because last night, you dreamed of your uncle, the one who gave you bad fishing advice and worse cooking tips. He was never very useful in life, but in the dream, he just stood there, silent, holding a piece of paper wall. You didn't ask what it meant. You didn't want to know. The monk finally says it loud, what everyone's been dancing around. There are ghosts here now, not just the memory kind, the lingering kind, and maybe that's okay. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Japan's long tradition of yurei, ghosts tethered to the physical world by unfinished business, became more prominent during and after times of mass death, especially when proper funerals weren't possible. Spirits denied closure, souls denied rest. Sound familiar? You help erect a few more Jizo statues, small ones. One carved from a burnt beam, one from sea-smoothed stone, one from a chunk of roof tile. They're crooked, lopsided, but they stand. People begin leaving offerings there too. Coins, plums, buttons, dried sardines. One child places a whole rice ball. You watch her step back, bow, and then whisper something, probably a name. You don't ask. That evening someone lights a floating lantern and lets it drift out onto the shallows. It tips over immediately and catches fire. Nobody laughs, but everyone stares at it until it goes out. Someone suggests a proper ghost cleansing ritual. The monk shrugs. You can't rush grief out of a place. You let it walk around. You let it wear itself out. Still, people want to do something, so they set up a line of small paper lanterns leading them down the path toward the beach. At dusk, they light them one by one. The path glows orange, soft, gentle. Someone starts singing again, this time a proper morning song. You hum along, then you hear it. Not the ghost, the wind, finally. It brushes through the trees, shifts the rice grass, makes the incense smoke twirl sideways. A sigh from the mountain or the sea, you can't tell. But it breaks the stillness, and something changes. People walk more confidently the next morning. Still quiet, still cautious, but more upright. A woman opens her bamboo chest and sets out hairpins to trade. A man begins reshaping planks into shelves. Someone catches a fish. You rebuild part of your shelter's roof. Someone compliments it. You say, "It's eel resistant." They don't ask what you mean. That night you return to the shrine and stand before the memorial bowl. You consider leaving something else, your uncle's comb maybe, but decide he probably wouldn't like being remembered for his hair. Instead, you light a stick of incense. You whisper a name. You're not even sure whose. It just feels right. And then you do something odd. You thank the ghost for sticking around, for not vanishing, for giving the village time to remember what it lost before it moves on. Quirky tidbit. Some Japanese villagers, especially in tsunami-prone regions, believe that ghosts were not just remnants of grief, but guides through it. That their presence was a blessing in disguise, a soft reminder not to forget. You like that idea. The well no longer whispers, or maybe you've just stopped needing to hear it. The monk sleeps soundly for the first time in a while. You do too. Your dreams that night are full of lanterns bobbing calmly on water that doesn't rise. You start hammering again. Not because you know what you're doing, you don't, but because hammering feels good. It makes noise. It pushes against the silence. It says, "I'm still here." The plank you're working on will probably fall off the frame by morning, but that's not the point. The point is that it's your plank. It's a small defiance nailed into soggy earth. Others are doing the same. A group of young men rebuilds the bathhouse. Why the bathhouse? No one knows, but it's the one building everyone seems to agree on. Maybe because even ghosts need hot water. Maybe because nobody can think clearly when they haven't scrubbed behind their ears in 2 weeks. The monk watches all this with a weary kind of approval. His only comment is, "Just don't forget the drainage." You want to ask how he knows about drainage. You decide not to. Rebuilding is slow, mostly because every nail has to be pulled from something else. Every beam is water-swollen and slightly cursed. Every thatched panel has been chewed by the sea in some unrepeatable way. But progress is progress, a wall here, a roof patch there, a wooden bench that sags but doesn't break. You feel your arms again, your back, your blisters. They hurt, they matter. You pause for lunch, 2 mouthfuls of rice and a piece of pickled something that might have once been radish. You chew slowly, seated on your new floor, staring at your new window, a square cut into a wall that doesn't exist yet. The sea glitters in the distance, as if to say, "What? I didn't do anything, you keep chewing." That afternoon the arguments start again. It was only a matter of time. Whose wood is whose? Who gets which wall? Why your shelf is taller than mine? Why your roof points south when the wind comes from the east? Someone throws a stick. Someone throws a bigger stick. Then it escalates. A small group, peasants mostly like you, confronts the steward of the shrine. He's a minor official, barely more than a robe with a pin, but he holds the temple keys and talks like he personally negotiated peace with thunder gods. He claims the land is sacred, that rebuilding should be approved, that spirits must be consulted first. The peasants claim their homes used to be on this land, their rice fields, their entire lives. "You think the gods care where I hang my bucket?" someone snaps. "You want permission to be alive now?" says another. It's not about houses. It never is. This is about control. Who gets to rebuild? Who decides what rebuilding even looks like? It's also about grief. About the way grief makes people loud, messy, and occasionally very bad at cooperation. The monk intervenes, sort of. He doesn't take sides. He just brings food. He hands out rice, pickled plums, and tea so bitter it could strip paint. No one thanks him, but they stop shouting long enough to eat. Somehow the fight fizzles out. Everyone agrees to build a bathhouse first, and argue about rice boundaries later. That evening you help raise the first roof beam for a communal hall. Just 4 posts and a tarp, but already it feels like a town square. People gather under it to dry seaweed, sharpen knives, and complain about how slippery everything still is. One person jokes that the shrine priest should live inside the hall so he can supervise their sins in real time. You laugh too hard at that. Later, a man wanders into the village from the next valley. He wears a hat made of reeds and carries a pack stuffed with dried chestnuts, twine, and exactly 3 onions. He brings news. Of course, the samurai are arguing. Some say the tsunami was caused by the wrath of a sea god angry about tax evasion. Others claim rival clans hired a monk to curse the coastline. One nobleman insists it was divine punishment for someone building a storehouse taller than his own. Historians still argue whether natural disasters accelerated political division in the Muromachi period, the traveller mutters, almost academically. I think it's just people being people. You like him. He trades you an onion for 2 fish heads and a mended bucket. A bargain you're still not sure about, but he seems happy. And then the real tension starts. The local samurai, yes, the ones who haven't helped at all, send a messenger. A boy, maybe 16, dressed like a parade drummer, too many colours, not enough sense. He arrives with the scroll, unrolls it dramatically, clears his throat. "In honour of your survival," he reads, "Lord Tamura grants permission to remain on this land." Dead silence. Someone coughs. You blink slowly. Permission to remain? The same land your family has lived on for generations. The same land that drowned your cousin, swallowed your goats, and still reeks of salt. You stare at the boy. He fidgets. He doesn't understand what he's just said. The monk finally speaks. Thank the Lord for his generosity, and ask him what took him so long. The boy bows and flees. You all stand there for a long moment. Then someone mutters, "We're not going anywhere." And someone else says, "Let him build a roof if he wants something named after him." That night, you sleep under your new roof. It leaks, but only a little. The rains come before dawn. Not a storm, just that slow, soft kind of rain that sounds like someone tiptoeing across your roof with wet rice paper shoes. You open one eye, listen to it for a while, and decide not to move. Not because you're comfortable, you aren't, but because moving would confirm how damp your bedding really is. Eventually, the leaks find you. One lands on your forehead, another slides down your neck. You sigh, sit up, and watch the droplets fall from the corner of your shelter like a miniature waterfall built by mischievous spirits. Outside, the village is silver and soggy again, but this time the water comes from above. It feels normal, which is weird. You throw on your only not completely wet layer and trudge through the slush toward the communal fire. Someone's already started it. You don't ask who. There's an unspoken agreement now. If you wake up first, you light the fire. If you wake up last, you fetch more kindling and pretend you were going to light the fire all along. The monk's already seated on a log, chewing a roasted chestnut and staring at the rain like it's trying to explain something. "Good rain," he mumbles. "Not angry." You nod because the monk says things like that, and you've stopped questioning him. By mid-morning the puddles have deepened. A plank bridge is laid across the worst part of the path. Someone slips and swears, someone else laughs. You help fish a sandal out of a puddle, and it squelches in your hand like it's mocking you. Then come the accusations. Again, a rice sack is missing, or maybe never existed, depends on who you ask. A boy was seen taking extra firewood, or maybe he was returning it. Also depends on who you ask. And then someone makes the bold mistake of blaming the gods. "This wouldn't have happened if people didn't stop paying shrine dues," says a grizzled man with eyebrows thicker than his common sense. "Oh yes," says someone else. "I'm sure the gods caused the ocean to attack because we skipped incense offerings." And just like that, the blame festival begins. Maybe the spirits are angry because you built your new roof higher than the shrine gate. Maybe it's because we let outsiders in. Maybe it's because someone took the lucky tanuki statue from the bathhouse and used it as a cooking stand. You try not to laugh at that one. You fail. The monk intervenes again, not with words this time, but with action. He sweeps the path, just picks up a broom and starts pushing mud around like it is the most natural thing in the world. A few others follow. Arguments dissolve into sweeping. The tanuki statue mysteriously reappears, still has soot on it, still smells like miso. Here's your mainstream history fact. After major disasters, religious authority in Japan often strengthened. People donated more, rebuilt temples faster, and leaned into rituals harder, especially when civic leadership failed or disappeared. But this didn't always translate into actual help. Sometimes it just meant more rules, and sure enough, later that day, a shrine representative arrives. Not the monk, a different one. Fancy robes, polished shoes, smells like incense and condescension. He surveys the wreckage like he's never seen mud before, wrinkles his nose at your shelter, clears his throat too many times. "I am here to assess," he announces, "the spiritual balance of this ground." You suppress the urge to offer him a spirit level and a sandal to the face. He demands to see the temple records. You all blink. He asks us who has kept track of deaths, property loss and offering logs. Someone says, "We've kept track of the living." He doesn't like that answer. He frowns at your memorial altar, the one with the bowl of objects and the hand-carved Jizo statues, and asks, "Who authorized these?" "No one," you say. "Exactly," he replies. The monk steps forward at last. "They were not authorized," he says, with the kind of quiet force that makes people stop chewing, "because they were necessary." The shrine official looks scandalized. You expect more arguing. Instead, he walks off, muttering something about commoners and improper rites. You don't care, you light incense anyway. That night, under the communal tarp, you sit with the others and eat eel stew. No one knows who caught the eel. It just appeared in the pot. You assume it volunteered. Someone sings, badly, someone else joins, worse. You sing too, "You're the worst of all, it's glorious." The monk finally smiles, a full, real one. He stands, raises his bowl and says, "To roofs that drip, food that's mostly edible, and people who keep showing up anyway." You clink bowls and drink cold tea like it's victory wine. Quirky tidbit. In some tsunami-affected villages of the later Edo period, songs were passed down specifically about the disaster. Not solemn memorials, but humorous chants and folk ditties. People remembered through music, through laughter. Because if you don't laugh at the sea eventually, you might never stop crying. That night, the rain stops. A full moon hangs low over the horizon. It reflects in every puddle like 1,000 little eyes, blinking gently, keeping watch. You sit by your shelter, run your fingers along the roofline and feel the damp bamboo bend under your touch. It won't last forever, but it doesn't need to. It just needs to last through tonight. And then tomorrow you'll build it again. You find the chicken again, not your chicken exactly, no one really owns anything anymore, but the same speckled hen that vanished during the first wave and was last seen perched triumphantly on a floating basket like a feathered warlord. Now she's back, standing calmly atop a collapsed roof beam, staring at you like she's judging your shelter's craftsmanship. Which, to be fair, is a little lopsided. You offer her some rice crumbs. She ignores them. You respect that. There's something surreal about how the animals are faring. The goats, those stubborn marshmallow-brained creatures, are thriving. The dogs, skittish but loyal, have stuck close to cooking fires. And the chickens, they're just everywhere, roosting in strange places, laying eggs in tool baskets. one even nested in the remains of the communal bath. You start keeping track, just for fun, and because your brain needs something that isn't salt, mud, or death. Then come the map makers. Well, they say they're map makers. You're not entirely convinced. They arrive in a boat that looks too clean and miles that are far too neat. They wear cloaks that still have buttons. That's suspicious. "We're here to update the coastal charts," one says, unrolling a scroll and looking around like he expected a city. Someone offers him an eel. He declines. They ask where the shoreline used to be. Everyone laughs. They ask how many lives were lost. No one answers. They ask if anyone saw the second wave form. A woman spits and walks away. You try to be helpful. You point to the hill where you watched it come. You trace its curve in the air with your hand. The mapman frowns and says, "No, scale. We need scale." You hand him a stick. "Here's scale." Quirky detail. Japanese cartographers in the medieval period sometimes updated coastal maps after tsunamis, but not always for humanitarian reasons. It was usually to calculate lost tax land. If rice paddies became seabeds, they had to redraw who owed what. Compassion had very strict borders. The cartographers thank you for your time and politely suggest everyone move inland. You stare at them dead-eyed and say, "And leave the chickens?" They get the message. After they leave, things feels off. People begin arguing again, this time about records. About whose land was whose, where this path used to lead, whether the bathhouse was 5 paces from the shrine or 6. Someone insists that the road to the mountain spring curved this way. Someone else says that's ridiculous. It curved that way. You quietly suggest drawing a new map. People look at you like you've suggested marrying the sea, so instead you start drawing it yourself. With a stick, in the mud. You trace where the river used to run, where the plum trees used to bloom, where your neighbour's house always smelled like burnt rice. Others gather around. They add things. A shrine here. No, a garden here. This was where I met my wife. That last one gets an awkward silence, because everyone knows he's never been married, but you let it slide. You start naming places that don't exist anymore. Fishbone Alley? 3 Chicken Slope. That one tree with the face. You don't realise it at first, but you're making something sacred. Not a real map. A memory. And once it's drawn, people don't argue as much. They just look. Later that night, a girl adds a chicken footprint to one corner. You frame it with stones. You fall asleep that night thinking about space. Not the kind in the sky, but the kind you fill. How a place holds you. How a path, a step, a doorway makes you who you are. And how quickly it can all go missing. In the morning, a goat eats part of your map. You rebuild it, this time with a fence. Around noon, someone claims they saw another wave in the distance. Everyone freezes. You climb the ridge, you squint, you wait. Nothing. False alarm. Still, your heart beats like a festival drum. Historians still debate whether tsunami recurrence fear changed settlement patterns in the 15th century. Some records show entire villages moved uphill. Others rebuilt in the same spots because, honestly, where else would they go? You can feel that tension now. Half the villagers want to move, half want to stay. "Why would I leave the land that raised me?" one man asks. "Because it nearly drowned you," someone replies, and back and forth it goes. The monk, when asked, just says, "The sea remembers, but so does the land," which is both comforting and completely unhelpful. You start measuring your own shelter's distance from the high tide line, just in case. You begin marking rocks. You draw lines in the mud. One for each wave, one for each rebuild. You carve tiny notches into a driftwood pole near your door. The children start doing it too. The pole becomes a monument, not to survival, but to persistence. That night, someone lights a paper lantern and writes a wish on it. The wish reads, "Let the waves forget our names." You smile. You steal that line and scratch it into the side of your shelter. The chickens watch you unimpressed. The goat eats the corner of your shirt, and the wind returns, soft, warm, and, for once, carrying only the smell of dry wood and pine. The stone appears overnight. It wasn't there yesterday. You're certain of it. You would have noticed. A waist-high slab, smooth on one side, rough on the back, planted firmly near the path to the shrine. It leans ever so slightly east, like it's listening to the sea. There's no name on it, no carving, just a line of charcoal-scrawled kanji that reads, "Do not build a house below this point. Do not build your house below this point." You run your fingers over the damp stone, feel the chill of it in your skin. It's freshly placed. Someone must have hauled it up from the beach or pried it loose from a collapsed wall. You ask around. No one admits to putting it there. The monk smiles faintly when you ask him. Maybe it wanted to stand. Of course, the children start leaving offerings at the base, shells, feathers, a partially bitten rice ball. Someone tucks a flower between two cracks. A piece of sea glass shows up later, glowing blue in the evening sun. And then someone else adds a second line. "I'll never forget the waves." The wave does not forget. You're not sure who wrote that one either. But now the stone has become something. A warning, a marker, a conversation starter, and maybe, if you're being honest, a challenge. Because down the hill, one man is already rebuilding. He's stacking stone with stubborn hands and a jaw set like granite. His new house is going up exactly where the last one washed away. You ask him if he saw the stone. "I saw it," he says, "but the sea's already taken everything I loved. It can't take more." You don't argue, but you step back from the foundation site just a little farther than before. Here's your mainstream historical fact. After major tsunamis, Japanese villagers did sometimes erect tsunami stones, large engraved boulders placed at the edge of flood zones. Some date back hundreds of years. Many bear variations of the same warning. Don't build below this point. The wave will come again. And yet, over time, people forget. Not because they're foolish, but because land is scarce, and memory is inconvenient. Soon others start building below the stone. Some say it's fine. The gods wouldn't send two disasters to the same place so soon. Others say the stone is for future generations, which conveniently means not them. You don't know how to feel. You sleep above the stone, just in case. Then one day it disappears. Not the whole thing, just tipped over, rolled slightly down the path, like someone or something decided to move it. The flower is gone, the writing's been smudged by rain, the offering scattered. You help prop it up again. You and 3 others dig a new base, deeper this time. You wedge stones around the foundation. The monk blesses it, gently tapping the top with his staff. "It stood once," he says. "It can stand again." Quirky fact. Tsunami stones were ignored for generations, buried in overgrowth, only to be rediscovered after new disasters struck the same spots. In some cases, modern construction bulldozed right over them until someone found an old map or an old warning too late. That evening, someone paints the stone. Bright red lines now trace the writing. Someone adds a turtle below and a wave cresting over its back. The kids call it Shell Mountain. You let them. It's better than large rock of impending doom. You build a bench beside it. People sit there now, share stories, boil tea, Someone even plays the flute near it, though badly. The man building below the line doesn't visit. But one morning his child does. She brings a doll half sodden, half mended, and places it gently at the base of the stone. She bows once, then runs back down the hill. You stay for a long time watching the clouds, and you wonder, how long will this warning last? Years, decades. Will someone look at this stone 200 years from now and say, they knew, and we didn't listen? You hope not. But you're also learning how quickly people forget when the sun shines too many days in a row. A week passes with no rain, no tremors, no tide surges. You feel the village relaxing, rice is planted again, bamboo is harvested, children play tag without looking nervously over their shoulders. Someone finds a cat it's adopted by everyone and named Wave Evasion Specialist. Even the sea looks different. Blue, glittering sleepy. You catch yourself trusting it. Then you walk by the stone again and remember, it doesn't move this time. It stays where you placed it. Tall, silent, waiting. The wind whistles around it, like it's listening. You wake to the sound of laughter. Real laughter. Not the nervous kind people let out when a pot falls unexpectedly, or when someone sees a ghost-shaped shadow that turns out to be a wet futon. This is different. You rise, stretch, and peek outside. The early morning light casts everything in soft gold. The rain from earlier in the week has finally faded into memory. Your shelter smells like pine and cooked rice. You can't remember the last time it smelled like anything other than damp socks and sorrow. Down the slope a crowd is gathering. You shuffle closer and discover the reason. Someone's goat has learned to climb a ladder. Not even a good ladder, just 2 planks and a wild sense of optimism. But the goat ascends it confidently and then proceeds to stand proudly atop a partially thatched roof. Everyone is watching it like it's a royal performance. The goat bleats once, then urinates directly onto a pile of sweet potatoes. The crowd erupts in applause. You laugh too, a real honest-to-goodness belly laugh that actually makes your ribs ache. And just like that, the heaviness lifts. Only a little, only for a moment, but enough to remind you what it feels like. Later, you help patch the roof the goat chose as its podium. The owner says he's considering naming it after the animal. Goat House. You approve. The rest of the day is full of small, good things. A child finds a cache of uneaten pickled eggs under a collapsed cart. Someone uncovers an old shamisen, only slightly warped. Someone else finds 3 more tiles that match your shelter's roof and gives them to you without asking for anything in return. You almost feel ready to think about the future, not just about rebuilding, but about continuing. And then someone arrives with news, a messenger from a fishing town farther up the coast. He walks with a limp and smells like travel, damp, wool, campfire smoke and exhaustion. He brings a letter wrapped in oilcloth bound with thin reeds. The monk reads it aloud. There's been another tsunami, far north this time. A different village, same wave behaviour, same earthquake, same sudden loss. You feel the breath catch in your throat. It's not your village, but you know it. The rhythm, the arc, the aftermath. A few people sit down immediately. Some clasp hands. One woman begins muttering a chant. The monk clears his throat and says, "They say the signs were the same." You think of your stone, the one that says, "Do not build your house below this point." You think of the man who did anyway. You walk down to his hut, now halfway done. The frame is sturdy. The roof is shaped like a folded fan. His daughter is tying reed mats to the doorframe. She hums. You don't know what to say, so you just stand there. Eventually he comes outside. He sees your face and nods. "You heard," he says. You nod. He looks back at his house, at his daughter. Still building, he says. Because what else is there? You don't argue, but that night you notice he sleeps outside, not because of the weather, because he's listening. The next day the monk gathers everyone again, this time not for a ritual, not for prayer, for a talk. He draws a line in the dirt, he marks the height of the waves, he points to the hills, he points to the rice fields. Then he does something unexpected. He invites you to speak. You blink. Me? You watch the wave, you watch the sea, you mark the land. So, with a stick in your hand and mud on your clothes, you step forward and speak. You talk about the ridge, the view, the markers. You talk about the stone, you talk about memory. And people listen, really listen. Historians still debate how communities pass down tsunami warnings. Some say oral stories, some say physical markers, some say both. But what you're doing now, this is how it begins, with one person remembering, with others choosing not to forget. Afterward, a few families quietly begin moving their sleeping mats up the hill. A child adds new notches to the tsunami pole, and the man who built below the line, he leaves his house standing, but he stops sleeping in it. Quirky fact, centuries later tsunami markers were still found in towns across Japan. Some were ignored, some were preserved, but the most powerful ones weren't the biggest. They were the ones people talked about. You wake early the next morning and hike up the ridge, your breath fogging in the cool air. You stand where you stood before, where the sky and sea first met in a black wall of water. The sea looks peaceful again, but now you see the shape of that first wave in every ripple, not with fear, with clarity. You walk back down, you find your comb, your bowl, your roof, you sit, and for the first time since that impossible day, you allow yourself to think not of the next disaster, but of the next season, the next meal, the next song. The air is warm today, almost too warm. It's the kind of warmth that clings to your skin like old memories. Not uncomfortable exactly, but unsettling, like the sea might be watching again, wondering what you've rebuilt, wondering how tall your house is now, how far you dared to move the foundation line. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders anyway, even though the sun's already up. The chickens are especially noisy this morning. One tries to climb onto your shelter's crossbeam. It fails. It tries again. Eventually you both agree the beam isn't chicken accessible and move on with your respective days. Today marks exactly 57 days since the wave. You didn't count at first, but then the little girl who tends the shrine bell started marking lines in the dirt beside the memorial altar. She called them sea ticks. One line for every night the ocean stayed quiet. You've stopped asking how she sleeps so close to the well. Now the altar overflows. Ribbons of woven grass, carved shells, teeth still anonymous. One offering is a perfectly shaped rice ball, hollowed out and stuffed with a single plum blossom. No one knows who made it, but no one touches it. You visit the stone. Do not build your house below this point. It's still standing, a little greener from moss, a little chipped from weather, but steady. You touch the turtle carving that a child added weeks ago. It's faded now. You close your eyes, and you remember. The moment the sky changed, the hiss of the sea pulling back, the sound of a wall becoming a wave, and how you ran, how you almost didn't. You open your eyes. The wind shifts. It smells like seaweed and cedar smoke. A breeze carries laughter from down the hill. Someone's boiling water too quickly and the lid clatters wildly. The monk shouts, "It's a tea fire, not a rice festival," and someone else yells back, "Then stop bringing festival leaves." The day feels lighter, not healed, but open. You join the others by the communal fire. Someone hands you a bowl of soup. It's too salty, but in the way that says you're alive. You chew slowly, watch the smoke curl. Later the children ask you to tell the story again, the one about the goat on the ladder. You do. Then they ask about the wave. You do that too. But gently, you tell it like a whisper. You skip the hard parts. You talk about rooftops and eels, not bodies. You make it something they can carry. Then one of them asks, "What would you do if it came back?" You pause, you look toward the sea, and you say, "I'd run, I'd climb, I'd remember the turtle stone, I'd take you with me." They nod. Then one little boy says, "I'd punch it." You laugh until your ribs hurt. Here's your final quirky detail. In some coastal communities, tsunami anniversaries are marked not with tears, but with picnics, food, laughter, performances, because the best way to remember the wave is to prove it didn't take everything, to make the land echo with joy louder than it ever echoed with fear. That night, under a sky soft with stars, you sit beside your shelter. Your eel bucket is full of rainwater now, reflecting the moon. You let it be. The monk sits beside you. "Still afraid?" he asks. "Not afraid," you reply. "Just awake." He nods. "Good." You fall asleep to the sound of crickets, to the sound of wind, to the gentle flap of someone's rice mat drying nearby. And in your dream, you're on the beach again. But this time the water stays where it belongs, and the sea is whispering thank you. The village is quiet now, the sea is quiet too. It sits out there just beyond the rocks, glimmering under the soft light of a low moon. For tonight it behaves. For tonight it breathes slowly. You lie on your mat, listening to the hush of the wind moving through reeds. Somewhere nearby, a child's laugh drifts on the air like a lullaby. Someone stirs a pot. Someone sings a little off-key. No one minds. Your shelter creaks gently like it's settling into the ground, or maybe just relaxing with you. The air smells like earth, like pine, like something old and clean and deeply kind. You watch shadows shift across the wall, soft shapes cast by candlelight. The shadows rise and fall like waves that never reach the shore. In the distance, a small bell rings once, then nothing. Just calm, just rest. Your body is heavy now, in a good way, the way that means it can finally let go, the way that means you've carried enough for one day, maybe more than one. You feel your breath slow, the ground below you is warm, you've made it this far, you'll go farther still, but not tonight. Tonight you sleep, the sea will wait.